music has changed drastically. Do you think musicians today have gotten better, or are they worse than what they were in 1981?
That's a great question. I think that you could probably slightly alter the question and say, what about the audiences? A lot of what the musicians are doing really ends up being kind of a reflection of what the audience wants.
Yeah, that's true.
So if you sit down and say, for instance, okay, in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, you had a lot of bands that were doing a lot of progressive, what now a lot of people would call maybe self-indulgent stuff, you know, like your Led Zeppelins and 15-minute guitar solos and drum solos and all that type of stuff. But people back in that time were maybe a lot more receptive and maybe more interested in it. I think that's a great question, and we could probably take up the whole time just talking about that. I mean, there's so much of that has to do with also the way information travels now with computers, with the internet.
What the hell do you think you're doing, man?
You're freaking Lars Ulrich from Metallica!
I wouldn't have to whore myself out if you kids didn't steal my music.
Whoa. We're not stealing, okay? We're just sharing with each other, you know.
Napster. Sharing's only fun when it's not your stuff.
People with television, with people's short attention span, you know, with all that type of stuff. Maybe even, I know this might sound kind of funny, but choices of recreational drug use. I mean, seriously, back then, like, dude, stoned, I'm stoned.
Yeah.
Jimmy Page is playing a 15-minute guitar solo. Wow, trippy, you know. But nowadays, it's like a lot of people I don't think has the attention span for that type of stuff, you know. So everything seems to get shorter. You have to try and say more in a shorter amount of time. And I think that maybe because of that, a lot of us, older generation that we grew up on, was about musicianship. You sit down and you talk about musicianship, you know, Bonham or Jimmy Page or Richie Blackmore, Neil Peart, or some of these virtuoso players. It's like people don't really care so much about that stuff anymore because maybe somehow it just kind of got lost and sped up. And maybe even we were a little bit to blame for speeding everything up. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. I think, you know, musicianship nowadays, it has a lot. I was talking to somebody the other day about rap music. And whatever you think of that is secondary to the fact that maybe, like for instance, in the rap world, it's maybe not so much about just the artist, but also about the producer. I think a lot of it has to do maybe less with the musicianship and more about the craft of songwriting, the craft of production, the craft of making records and making music that people want to hear. Did I sprinkle on it?
Well, slow down!
You know, even look at our last album. Radio didn't get the same reception as a lot of our earlier stuff simply because it was a harder record to listen to. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. Radio, I think, is certainly going through a period of being very conservative right now, and I think that things like musicianship and so on is certainly secondary to more production, the craft of songwriting, and people's shorter attention span. That's a great question, by the way.